Welcome back again to Last Week I Watched. I'm Mark, and I watch movies and TV and review them and try to give you some feedback on what might be worth your time and might not be worth your time. So last week I watched Escape from Pretoria, Inventing Anna, Rose Island, The Privilege, One Missed Call, and Hush. So let's talk about them. Okay, first up is Escape from Pretoria. It's a film from 2020. It stars Daniel Radcliffe, Daniel Webber, and Ian Hart, and it was showing on Netflix. So this is based on the real-life prison escape of two political captives from a South African prison after they're imprisoned for imposing apartheid. This is a really interesting true story. It's about, these people, they're imprisoned by the South African government for opposing apartheid. I mean, you'd think this would be the right thing to do, but apparently in those times people were against that. In this case, Tim Jenkin and Stephen Lee were locked up for distributing literature opposing apartheid. Admittedly, they were distributing it in a rather novel way. I think it was via some kind of air cannon or something like that would launch all these leaflets out into the air. I don't think they were explosive, but certainly not something that I would have thought you'd need to be locked up for. So this movie details their actions in plotting and eventually enacting an escape from prison so they can return to fighting for equality. Yes, they go right back to it and keep on fighting, which is pretty impressive. It's really fascinating how they learned about the prison, how the locks worked, and then just kind of extrapolate backwards so they could figure out how to escape. I think at one point he says, I just had to work out what I could figure out and then work back from there. And literally he starts drawing out the keyholes and the shape of the keyhole and drawing reproductions of the keys and like looking in the lock and seeing how it works and then carving the keys. And it must have taken so much time, but I guess when you've got nothing better to do in prison, it's something to shoot for. Tim spends an amazing amount of time reproducing all the keys that he sees on the guards' belts, and producing these things even on the quiet in the woodwork shop and without getting caught is just mind-boggling. He gradually works his way through all the doors in the prison until he has copies of the keys, and the film actually goes through and details however many days in this is, or this is it 300 days in or whatever. So I believe it took them quite a while to get out, but he does eventually figure out ways to escape from the cells, especially in, I think, his cell where they have sort of a double door, so he has to kind of lean out through sort of a window, sort of a barred window, and then he concocts some sort of device to be able to get the key into the lock and be able to turn it from a distance from the window. So, the engineering know-how of this man is just amazing, really. And then with the help of Stephen and some of the others, they all come up with a plan together. The movie is incredibly tense. I mean, it's hugely tense. We're on the edge of our seat the entire runtime, just yelling at the screen, even though I know that it makes no difference. Every time there was a setback or something unexpectedly went wrong, I genuinely felt fearful for these people. As always in any sort of prison movie, the guards are abusive, either drunk with power or racist that felt that these men were race traitors to the country. So, they're kind of threatening and menacing. The unexpected cell inspections create genuine stress, and Tim and his friends go to some pretty impressive lengths really to hide stuff around the prison. But you're always worried they're going to get caught or something is going to go wrong or get found, and the guards would then have the excuse to, do away with them or beat the crap out of them or whatever. They've already been threatened with being shot by a sniper if they try to get over the wall. So interesting fact too, the chisel that they use on the door in the movie is the actual chisel that they really did use. One of them kept it as a souvenir or something, and it was loaned to the production for the film. So the film's an important story. It's one of those triumphs of human spirit over inhumanity, and given how the world is at the moment, it's important to share and realize that we can really make a difference and cause change. You just got to try, really, and it's definitely worth your time. I would check it out. Okay, next up was Inventing Anna. It's a TV series. It's from 2022. It stars Anna Chlumsky, Julia Garner, and Katie Lowes, and it's showing on Netflix. So this is about journalist Vivian Kent, played by Anna Chlumsky. She has a lot to prove, and so she embarks on investigating the case of Anna Delvey, played by Julia Garner, who's a German heiress who stole the hearts of New York's social scene and stole their money as well. As the journalist investigates, she discovers the story is probably more bizarre than she could have imagined. This is another true story about a con artist who swindled the rich and fabulous on the New York social scene, and it's based on the article How Anna Delvey Tricked New York's Party People by Jessica Pressler. It's another one of her investigative pieces which was made into a movie. I think her other one she did was made into Hustlers. This is a mini-series of 9 episodes of around an hour each. The story jumps back and forth, filling in more of the story from different people's point of view and their interactions with Anna, and I guess what happened to them. Much comment has been made about Julia Garner's muddled accent, but I do wonder if this is intentional, because Anna is a fake and her identity is a muddle of claims and lies along with her accent, so I'd expect it to be a bit of a hodgepodge of confusion and fakery, and I think she does a good job. Anna clearly has some kind of mental issues as well, some kind of sociopathy, and a burning obsession with being famous, which is strangely relevant in today's age, where everyone is obsessed with the fakery of social media and the fake image they're projecting into the world. I think it says a lot that most children now list influencer or YouTuber as their desired future career, citing money or fame as their motivator. Anna uses confidence to bluster her way into the world of the wealthy, and even if it's unintentional that she's doing just because she's a bit twisted in her thinking, it's still one of the main techniques of a con man. She lavishes luxuries on people around her to convince them that she's authentic, then shakes them down for more money, which she goes on to use on the next group of people, and she just kind of gradually works her way up the hierarchy that way. All the while she leaves a trail of destruction in her wake, and nobody ever questions it because they believe she's got a vast stash of inherited wealth coming her way, and they'll eventually be rewarded. So it's manipulating their own greed. Ultimately, though, they don't want to draw attention to the fact that they got conned because they're humiliated and shamed by her, and that enables her to keep on going with it, until eventually it just goes too far. The story is really fascinating, especially the legal loopholes that allow her to get away with it with relatively minor consequences, considering the multi-year devastation she creates in people's lives. And the fact that the journalist and people around Anna still manage to identify with her and sort of build a weird kind of friendship with her speaks to her powers of manipulation. But it does sometimes feel like the series outstays its welcome. The story could have been tightened up a little bit. It goes off on a few tangents that don't necessarily have any significant payoff. It just sort of adds color, which is fine, but it feels a little bit like Tiger King or some of Netflix's other true crime shows, where it's just stretched out a little bit too long. They maybe just need to work on sort of tightening these stories down a little bit, rather than trying to squeeze out as many episodes as they can. But if you're interested in true crime, it's definitely worth a look. I also think it's something that we're going to be seeing more of these kinds of stories, especially with the rise of crime in the crypto space now. All of this is becoming a lot more relevant with these sort of cons, or these kinds of personalities that will do anything they can for fame and wealth. Okay, next up was Rose Island. It's a film from 2020. It stars Elio Germano, Leonardo Lidi, and Matilda De Angelis, and it's showing on Netflix. So this is another true story. It's a bit of a recurring theme this week. This was based on the true story of an idealistic Italian engineer who builds his own island off the Italian coast and goes on to declare it a nation, drawing the world's attention. It also draws the ire of the Italian government, but to change the world, risks must be taken. So this movie is Italian, so you'll need to engage subtitles for this, but it's a really interesting true story. In 1967, Italian engineer Giorgio Rosa, he constructs a 400 square meter platform off the coast and furnished it with a restaurant, bar, nightclub, souvenir shop and post office. His vision was to create a place where people could be free. In 1968, the platform declares independence with Rosa as self-declared president. This obviously doesn't sit well with the Italian government, who viewed it as a way to avoid taxation and likely a threat to their authority. Rosa ends up going to the European court to regulate the dispute, and the Italian government then declares war on this tiny little island and invades the island, ultimately destroying it. It's quite fascinating that Giorgio did in fact change the world. I was quite shocked to find this out at the end, but probably not in the way he was expecting. This resulted in a major international law on territorial confines being altered, in effect moving the territorial boundaries outwards from all land masses, increasing the physical boundaries of a government's legal authority. The movie's got a quirky sense of humour. It portrays this group of oddballs with a fairly harmless vision in a fun way. The government does not come off so well. They look like a bunch of bully boys who are trying to reassert their authority. Everything looks reasonably period authentic, and it has a really good 60s period soundtrack with some Italian songs mixed in. It's a fun, enjoyable film. It's an interesting topic, and you find yourself hoping these idealists were able to pull off some kind of freedom. They weren't doing it for any kind of crazy doomsday prepper ideals. Giorgio just wanted to do his engineering without landing in trouble all the time, and I think he just wanted people to have somewhere they could come and be free without the burden of rules and regulations all the time. And I kind of understand that. I know we have to have rules and things to keep people safe, but sometimes government just bans things rather than dealing with them in sort of an appropriate way. And I think we should be finding ways to say yes sometimes rather than just saying no to things, especially for new things that could come along and improve our life, make things easier. But because it's new, they don't know how to deal with it, so they just ban it. Anyway, check it out. It's a fun movie. Okay, next up is The Privilege. It's from 2022. It stars Max Schmalzfling. Apologies if I get your name wrong. Leah Van Aken and Tijan Marai. Again, foreign names, sorry, I'm trying my best. This movie was showing on Netflix. So this one's about a wealthy teen and his friends attending an elite private school, and they uncover a dark conspiracy while looking into a series of supernatural events. This one's a German film, so you'll need to engage subtitles again. There seems to be quite a lot of foreign films on there at the moment, and I wonder if that's because COVID has affected production of things. So there's a lot of foreign movies on there, but there are actually some really good movies, so don't be afraid to engage subtitles and check them out. So this film grabs you right at the beginning when Finn's older sister, she's behaving quite oddly. She abducts him and tries to suicide herself with him in tow, only fall to her death from the dam. So it establishes this mystery, and you fast forward to Finn as a teen. He's suffering mental issues from this event. He's plagued with nightmares and horrific visions, but he's privileged, wealthy, comfortable. He's having personal medical care, the best of everything really. But he's still not doing well. When another student at school warns him before suiciding, Finn and his friend Lena start to investigate, and they uncover a conspiracy. This film's a mashup of a couple of different horror ideas, which is interesting, and it has a couple of good sequences, but it does sag a lot in the middle. You'll probably figure out what's going on long before the film gets there, unfortunately, but it's got some pacing issues, and while the strong opening gets you hooked, it doesn't sort of sustain that initial high. It sort of drops back to a slow burn as it establishes the characters and starts to unravel the central mystery, and this is a little bit of a letdown. It probably needed a few more moments to just keep pulling that tension up throughout it and to keep it interesting. It does get more exciting towards the end when everything is revealed, and I want to talk some spoilers here, so if you want to watch it, go check it out now and pause the video and come back. So the children's parents, they're operating as some kind of satanic coven, and they're using witchcraft and sort of various fungus and things like that to transfer their souls into their children's bodies when they get old. So in that regard, it's similar to Get Out. The only thing that confused me a little was the pharmaceutical company that's spreading the fungus in pill form. So are they rolling the pills out to make more fungus? by infecting the population? Or is it so they can start farming more children for eventual possession by wealthy clientele? I was a little bit confused by that, and I'm not quite sure what was going on there. I understand them, preparing their own offspring for future conquest, I guess, takeover. But I'm not quite sure what was going on there with their wider plan. I guess maybe that's being left for a sequel, perhaps. Who knows? The central conceit, though, is interesting, but it definitely needs some work with the pacing. Perhaps a little bit more supernatural craziness needed to be sprinkled throughout just to really lift it into being more memorable. As it is, it's got some good elements, but overall, it's sort of a middle-of-the-road horror. Check it out if you've got nothing else to watch. Okay, the next film was One Missed Call. It's from 2008, stars Edward Burns, Shannon Sossamon and Ray Wise, and it's showing on Netflix. So several people, they start receiving voicemails from their future selves. It's sort of a message telling them the date, time, and some of the details of their death. This is a remake of a 2003 Japanese film called Chakushin Ari, which is directed by Takashi Miike. Interesting that the film was panned as being unoriginal by J-horror standards, but this one is ranked even worse than the original. I'm not quite sure why. It's criticised heavily for being derivative of other films such as Scream, Final Destination, The Ring, Dark Water, etc. But most movies are derivative of something else, some other story or elements or whatever. I mean, even Star Wars borrows things from Dune and Flash Gordon and everything else. Stories are built on things that came before. So the remake seems largely to just be an almost carbon copy remake of the film though, so any derivativeness is probably more down to the genre than the film itself. But honestly, if you've not seen the original film, then it's fine. I enjoyed the mystery as they start to unravel the origin of it all, and the supernatural elements that the victims experience relate back to the original death of the person causing the problems. The Rube Goldberg nature of the deaths do seem similar to Final Destination, but we still enjoy those movies just fine. So, and I think we even had similar deaths in the Omen in the 70s. So, again, these things are derivative of each other. That's fine. I think if I'd seen the original film, then I'd probably have been more annoyed with this being a carbon copy English remake. But that's often the case with many English remakes. They don't necessarily improve on anything. They just do away with the subtitles. And often the original film is better anyway, even if you do have to enjoy it with subtitles. So, at any rate, it's an okay horror film. The mystery elements are by far the best part of it. There are still some okay deaths in it. If you haven't seen it or its predecessor and you're into horror, give it a watch, but it's not necessarily bringing anything new to the table. Okay, finally today is Hush. It's a film from 2016. It's starring Kate Siegel, John Gallagher Jr. and Samantha Sloyan. It's showing on Netflix. So this one's about a deaf and mute writer, Maddie Young, played by Kate Siegel, and she's retreated into the woods to live a solitary life, and she finds she has to fight for her life when a menacing stranger, played by John Gallagher Jr., appears at her window. It's a fairly standard home invader, intruder, stalker film, but what gives it an original spin is Maddie's disabilities, which are both a positive and a negative in the course of the film. She doesn't realise that a friend who's left her house has actually been murdered outside her home, nor does she realise the intruder has entered her home and taken her phone, until the stalker starts to taunt her, taking pictures of her and sending them to her. And that's quite some tense moments actually, where she's kind of just going about her life oblivious to the fact that this is all going on around her. Maddie attempts to escape, but the stalker has the advantage. He disables the power to the house, sabotages her vehicle and traps her inside, and the whole thing quickly devolves into a cat and mouse game between her and the stalker as she tries to find a way to escape. Now I want to talk some spoilers here, so if sounds like something you're into, go and watch it now and come back. It's very good. I recommend checking it out. Okay, so spoilers. Eventually, she realizes she's going to have to kill this person and she has to fight back. This is where her disabilities become a positive, and she blinds the attacker with some spray, bug spray I think, and overwhelms him with noise from her alarm. So, of course, he's not as well adapted to the loss of senses as she is, and she's able to overcome him. And I thought that was really good. It's unlike some of the other films where people have been affected by loss of senses. They don't always, use those things in a particularly good way or in an interesting and original way. And I think the disabilities are portrayed well in this. And the film continually builds tension until the ending. It's got a relatively small cast, but even though they do a really excellent job, and some of them have quite small parts, but they're still good when they're there. I think it's an excellent thriller. I highly recommend you check it out. Also, bonus points to the film for referencing Midnight Mass. This is a series written by the same writer-director team as this film, which I've reviewed in a previous episode. So it almost feels like they're building their own little universe, it seems. I look forward to seeing what Mike Flanagan and Kate Siegel come up with next. I believe they're working on Fall of the House of Usher by Poe, so I'm excited for that. I'm looking forward to that coming out. Okay, so those are my suggestions for this week. I hope some of those are of interest to you, and there's quite a few in there that are really worth your time to check out. Especially some of the true stories as well. I think, reality sometimes is more surprising than you might think. And, those are some interesting stories about things that you may not have heard about or been aware of. As always, if you enjoyed my reviews, please do click on the subscribe button, click on the bell so you get notifications, and feel free to leave any comments below the video. I'm happy to talk to you about any of these films. And if you've got any suggestions, please do leave those below as well. I'd like to get some recommendations for things that you think might be worth watching. And on screen is my Twitter link as well. If you want to tweet at me, I often tweet on there while I'm watching things and comment and whatnot. If you want to come on there and tweet at me, feel free. Alright, so thanks for watching. I hope you're all well. Stay safe out there. Enjoy some movies and TV, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye now.